This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It's Monday, March the 2nd. No, it's March 3rd, actually, 2014. I'm Doug Hagmann, the co-host, along with my son, Joe Hagmann. Together, we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Once again, this is a live broadcast. It is Monday, March 3rd, 2014. Folks, you're about to hear 3 hours of unbiased, uncensored news, information, analysis that you need to know in these very perilous times, and perilous they are. And we believe you're listening to the only show where the news is presented to you in 3D. You know, we do look well beyond the headlines and bylines and to offer you the straight scoop, the straight information on what's really going on. The information, topics, things that the mainstream media won't cover, don't cover, refuse to cover, or cover only by paying lip service. We broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Our home base, of course, on the Internet is HomelandSecurityUS.com. We're also simulcast, and I want to thank Christians United Broadcasting Network. Thank you, Troy. Thank you so much to CUBN. You can find us there at the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.com. Two N's on the word Hagmann. Obviously, the name Hagmann. Spell the word and out. That's the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.com. Thanks for joining us tonight. Portions of tonight's broadcast are brought to you courtesy of Audible.com. I'd like to remind people about that. We are partnered up with Audible.com. They've got over 150,000 titles of books and entertainment, information, whatever you want to call it, on, well, audio, the spoken word, from the Bible to 1 second after. Folks, if you visit our website, that's HomelandSecurityUS.com, click on the Audible link on the right-hand side of the page. That'll take you to our home base at audible.com. There, you can obviously get a free trial month of Audible, the service that they provide, as well as a free download of an audiobook you can play on your iPhone, iPad, iPod, computer, any type of electronic instrument. Heck, tin can and a string almost. They make it very easy for you. We're clients. We're happy clients. We know many clients as well, very satisfied. I want to just welcome everyone and also let you know, folks, that Friday's episode, for whatever reason, was not archived in the normal fashion by BTR. And I've received numerous emails and phone calls.
On BTR, too. It wasn't just our show.
All right. Well,
I saw some complaints on the Blog Talk interface thing of other hosts asking why their archive did not upload on Friday. Why they hit play and it was nothing to download or nothing to listen to. So hopefully whatever that problem is not just isolated to us and it is not still affecting shows.
Well, I hope not as well. I mean, I've received countless emails and a couple of interesting phone calls, very interesting phone calls over the weekend here at the office, at the studios, which to the gentleman that called demanding that we put it up immediately and having some sort of mental breakdown as to why it's not up. Sir, feel free to call on air and repeat what you said to the audience, repeat what you can in accordance to FCC. We'd be more than happy to talk with you on air. That's just not the best way to start the week, is it?
No, but thanks to Christians United Broadcasting Network, who uploads our shows to YouTube, is going to be uploading the archive back to Friday's Blog Talk episode. And I don't know if we can get it up on iTunes, but it will be available via Blog Talk Radio. We're just having to upload the actual episode back to Blog Talk Radio, and it will be there. And I'll let you guys know when it's there. We'll let you know when it's there. And thank you, Troy, for being able to do that.
Exactly. And I think a couple of things before we've got many news topics to talk about tonight, and I just want to spend a little bit of time on Ukraine. I was on WBEN AM 930 today for 90 minutes. That was on the Tom Bowerly show out of Buffalo, Niagara Falls, New York, and I'm going to be on in Tulsa tomorrow on KFAQ tomorrow, and that's going to be with Pat Campbell out of Tulsa from, I believe it's going to be 7 or 7:30. I'm not exactly certain of the time, 7 to 7:30 a.m. Eastern time, to talk about the bankers. Also in issue in Ukraine, but these two items are related, and I just kind of want to touch on this because this is extremely important. People think that. The first thing I want to bring out to people's attention is the fact that we had said that after the Olympics, Putin would come out swinging, and I think that we were pretty right on the mark with that because we're seeing that take place over in Ukraine. And for some reason, I just maybe it's because we really didn't cover this that well or that much. People think that the issue in Ukraine, that the conflict began after. I mean, it began like last week, and it didn't. It certainly expedited. It was expedited last week, but we have to go back and look, and you'll see, for example, that the chronology of the events in Ukraine. Well, the anti-government protests have been racking Ukraine since their president, Viktor Yanukovych, decided to put a planned agreement in place with the European Union on ice. You see, folks, that happened back in the end of November. Sorry about that, Yanukovych. I don't know. I'm looking at my notes here and I'm not focusing very well. But that happened back in November 21st to the 24th. And there was an agreement that was going to be met, and of course he refused to sign or didn't sign, and it was with the EU, and that happened on November 21st to the 24th. And it's interesting how we look at this, or how this began, how the uprising began. The thousands of people took to the streets on Independence Square in Kiev back on November 24th, 2013. Now, if we keep going forward, if we keep going toward today, look back into December, just 3 days before Christmas, there was a large protest there where 500,000 people in Kiev were calling for early elections. There was some disharmony in the government there between, I keep killing this name, Yanukovych, and the opposition leader. But so this didn't start right away. When did this start? Well, if we go back to the end of the Olympics, after the Olympics were over, just within 48 hours of the end of the Olympics, the foreign ministers of Germany, France, and Poland brokered an agreement between the Ukrainian government and the opposition, calling for an interim government, a return to the 2004 Constitution, and early elections by December. Now, demonstrators were on Independence Square, and they continued to call for Yanukovych's ouster. Now, it's interesting because after the February 21st meeting, and don't forget, February 19th through the 21st, at least 77, 78, 80 people were killed in a number of clashes during that 3-day period between the 19th and 21st of February, with the clashes between the demonstrators and the police there. EU foreign ministers in Brussels had agreed on economic sanctions. But I want to point a couple of things out to you. One of the big things that took place in the Ukraine, or in Ukraine, said properly, it's not the Ukraine, it's Ukraine, is one of our, within the crowd of demonstrators, one of our operatives, CIA assets, was captured. Now, that CIA asset was actually protecting, or being protected, it was protecting an IMF official. What were the IMF doing in Ukraine? And how did that all happen?
Before you answer that, I just want to tell you I do have a minute 48 clip on the IMF ready to... the central banker, Prime Minister says Ukraine ready for IMF auction block. Okay.
All right. Now keep that in mind. We need to know that this is a banker war. I mean, all of them are bankers' wars, but this in particular has a lot to do with money. Has a lot to do with the central bank, and this is a fight. Go ahead.
Assets, energy, resources.
Right. As a matter of fact, 8 specific, very vital gas energy lines run between, from Russia through Ukraine and supply Europe with their energy needs.
18, it says 18 European. Oh, okay, 8. In this article, it says pipelines are used to transit Russian national gas to 18 European countries, including France and Italy. They have BS type on this one.
No, 18 countries, but 8 lines.
8 lines, okay.
All right. Well, those are at least the ones that are being protected at any rate. But if we look back in recent history, subsequent to the Olympics or the ending of the Olympics, and let's go back to the Olympics and think about those, the opening and closing ceremonies. Isn't it interesting? Where the Illuminati, of course, and folks, you might think that I'm totally out of my mind, but when you start understanding that the Illuminati pretty much, or the power brokers, or the people who run things, illustrate what they're doing through things like the Olympics and Super Bowl. Various events that have large audiences, and of course the Olympics have had a large audience. So they telegraph what they're going to do or what their intent is. And isn't it interesting that the particular ring, that circle, the Olympic logo, the ring that would represent North America, malfunctioned on the opening or during the opening as well as the closing ceremonies. Now, if you're a conspiracy buff, maybe that might mean something to you, right? Or if you're conspiracy-minded, or if you're just looking perhaps for someone sending a message. But what we have right now, folks, is we are being marched. The United States is being marched back into conflict with Russia, much like the Cold War. If you look back at World War II being an extension of World War I, this is an extension of the Cold War. When I say we're being marched back, the United States, you've got to know that the U.S., the intelligence assets of the United States, of really many NATO countries, including Britain, France, and others, are on the ground in Ukraine causing all of this mayhem, this chaos. And don't forget, out of chaos comes what? Comes order. It's going to be a new order, their order. Now, any front against Syria is a front against Putin. This is just another front against Putin, Ukraine. Folks, you've got to consider what's going on at multiple levels. This is a 3-tiered chess game taking place. This, according to my good friend in the intelligence world. And you've got to know that the lie is different at every level. The moves are different at every level. It might be the globalist game, but there will be battles fought on different levels. And as I said, we're being marched back into conflict, direct conflict with Russia. But before direct conflict occurs, and we can see it in the Bible, but before that occurs, we've got to have conflict by proxy. Well, this is exactly what's taking place. Isn't Ukraine, for example, a satellite of Russia? Of course it is. So this is a battle at a nation-state level, yet by proxy. And of course, once everything is smashed to pieces, and it will be, the pieces we're seeing right now being reassembled. We're being marched into a very specific end. Now, for those who think that this is going to take place right away, that things are going to happen really quick, I suppose things could happen quickly, and things are happening quickly in Ukraine and Crimea. But don't forget, think back to the first Desert Shield and Desert Storm back in 1990, 91. Think back to that time period. Remember how long? Remember the 6 months? For a good 6 months, we were saying to Saddam, "We're coming, we're coming, we're coming," and we moved battle pieces into place. Took a while, didn't it? Took a lot of maneuvering. Well, it took a lot of conditioning, didn't it? We're being conditioned, folks. This is part of the conditioning process. There's a lot of maneuvering that lies ahead. There's a lot of hard jolts, bolts, and a lot of bumps along the way that we will experience. But when I mentioned about the IMF, in that clip you heard about the IMF, at the end of this, or at some point in all of this, this is all about the destruction of the United States, the orchestrated destruction of the United States, and part and parcel to that is the destruction of the dollar, the killing of the dollar. There are a couple of folks. There are a couple of, I think, very important articles and YouTube videos to pass around. The one YouTube video is called "Kill the Dollar," and I believe that was done by somebody by the name of Snordster. What this person did was, got a great radio voice, by the way, read the article that I wrote about Obama Insider, "We're just going to kill the dollar." The death of the dollar does not mean, folks, that it's going to die in one day. Please understand that. It doesn't mean that you're going to wake up one day and the dollar will be worthless. If that was the case, well, it would be counterproductive in many ways. One of the ways is the fact that there's no time for the transference of minds, of attitudes, of perspectives. You, ladies and gentlemen, your neighbors, your friends, the people you sit in church with, the people you go to parties with, the people you work with, they've got to be sold on the magic act that's about to occur, on the outcome. And think about this: if you've ever been to Vegas or any place where you've watched a magic act take place, or a magician, just not one card trick that the magician does; it's many card tricks, isn't it? In order to get us maneuvered to get us to accept this new currency, which this new monetary system, we need to be shown as a populace that we're in total belief that it's magic and just not the sleight of hand that's at play here. We've got to believe in the lie, or be made to believe in the lie, that this is all because of some cosmic accident, but it's not. Were you ever in a position, folks, where you see something and it just, whatever it might be, you're just, I don't know. I'm trying to think of an example, and I'm coming up blank, but something where your mind can't really compute right away. Something that just doesn't register with you. That's a very definition of cognitive dissonance. Your mind just can't really, for whatever reason, whatever you're looking at, seeing or hearing, it's just not clicking. Well, with many of us, a cognitive dissonance, you just don't want to hear it. And not you, because I believe, with very, very, very few exceptions, I totally believe that our audience is perhaps the most learned, knowledgeable audience of all talk shows anywhere. And I go to bat for any of you anytime. I believe that much in you. So the people behind all of this have got to allow enough time to get our minds to make things register, to believe in the magic, and not realize that it's actually deceit, deception, and sleight of hand. You see, we need the ability to process time of this new paradigm that the dollar is going to be worth less and then eventually not at all. Who could ever think that? As my close neighbor tells me, it can't happen here. Why? It's never happened before, even during the worst part of the Great Depression. Cognitive dissonance. You see, they don't just want to kill the dollar. They want to kill the concept of the dollar, the idea of the dollar. And this is going to take multiple incidents, multiple hits, more time to get into this agreement. People are going to have to come to hate the dollar in order to love what comes next. We're in for a series of multiple events, and then time maybe in between, kind of a soak period to allow us to come into agreement, acknowledgement, and then acceptance. This is what we're looking at, ladies and gentlemen, and this, what's taking place in Ukraine. When I was on with Tom Bowerly today, off air, we were talking, and he says, "We're going to get into it, aren't we, today?" And I said, "It's up to you." He said, "I don't care what's going on in Ukraine." Now, Tom's a great guy, and we have a friendship outside of his radio program. And I said, "Tom, are you understanding what's really going on in Ukraine with Russia?" And he said, "Yeah, we shouldn't be there, or we shouldn't do anything. We should just not do a thing." I said, "Well, it's kind of late for that. We're already doing something." And he, at the introduction, he says, "We're going to have blows, come to blows during the broadcast," but we didn't actually. We actually agreed on everything. But think back to 2008, folks. Remember how gas prices went radically higher, surged higher, 25 to 30% at the beginning of 2008, or the spring, I think it was, of 2008. Remember the constant, continuous beating of the news reports that gas would go higher and higher and higher, and Al Gore getting on there and talking about his global warming and all this, and gas should be at $6 or $7 a gallon. This is a concept. I guess I'm talking to you about this as a concept, and we had on Friday Wayne Jett talk about the crisis of 2008. But to tell you or to show you, for example, how things are related, and energy is one of those things. We'll say to the housing prices. Energy is one of those things that you buy to use it right away. You buy it at the pump to put gas in your car. You're driving your car around. It flows into your home. You heat your home with it. You pay the gas company. You buy the propane tank. You get the idea. Prices are like a lever. My good friend said, "Give me a lever long enough and I can move the Empire State Building." Well, the high fuel prices impact the choices, people's choices, our choices, whether to buy a big or small car, whether to buy that new sofa or to buy that boat in the spring, or maybe not. Maybe I can't afford to fill up that boat. People began hunkering down with the drumbeat of the news of the gas prices. But where it hit us most critically was the housing market in the Keynesian economic system that we have. The housing, the credit, well, maybe we can't afford that house. When there's 5% more buyers, we've found, than sellers, house prices go up. But when there's more sellers than buyers, of course, house prices go down. It's an expanding or contracting market, and speculators drive that market. If demand is more than supply, people will be betting against each other, of course. And like I said, increased demand drives up prices dramatically. The reverse is true. House prices are determined in the margins with very subtle changes, by very subtle changes in demand. What changed in 2008? Really, in the spring, energy prices. Long-term plans then in the housing market were affected. People have, and I think Wayne Jett made this very clear on Friday, people have relied on or have considered continued steady inflation, something that's at least predictable. What we see right now is something that's unpredictable. Look at the dollar internationally. Look at why is the IMF over in Ukraine? Well, we've got to find new customers for our dollar. Oh, they want to tank the dollar. They want to kill the U.S. dollar, but they want to do it on their time, not ours. They want to do it on their time, and I'll tell you why. It's kind of like this. It's kind of like the Titanic, selling tickets to the Titanic, right? Beautiful boat, unsinkable. You can't. There's just no way that boat would ever sink. Well, it's fallacy number one. Of course, not enough lifeboats. But they want to get as many of us into the Titanic as they can, and especially those in the middle class. They want to get everything. They're going to sink the Titanic on their own timetable. They're out there finding new customers for the dollar, to buy the dollar, including Ukraine, to expand the service of the debt. Dollars are based on debt. And then once things are going well, once things seem to be, okay, leveling out, and people have flocked back to the dollar, bang, they're going to hit it. And then after another period, they're going to hit it again. It's death by 1,000 paper cuts, or maybe only 5 or 6 stab wounds, or maybe 3 or 2 shots. I don't know. But it certainly doesn't have to be one blow to the head. The battle is at the peripheries of our empire. That's where the battles are. They are less enamored with the dollar, so they are the targets of the actual killing of the dollar. More dollars will be needed to service the debt as inflation and interest requires more dollars to come into circulation. Think of a Ponzi scheme. What is the master of the Ponzi scheme always trying to do? Bring more players in on the promise of making more. And then, well, once the players are brought in, bang, it goes down. New players are brought into the game, or the game is over, and they're bringing in new players right now. And just to be clear again, in Ukraine, a better, more clear way of saying that individual that was captured in Ukraine was actually protecting CIA officers. There's an agency that does that. They were using an international security force with identification as an international security force from Europe and the UN, protecting the IMF members. Well, why is the IMF over there? Why? In the course of Putin tearing down the unrest, the chaos in Ukraine, we are trying to move them into the U.S. dollar in some combination of the euro and British pound. The IMF is the instrument, that's the group, the people that are doing the bidding of the globalists and trying to put in new political leaders. And don't forget, back to the Ponzi scheme. The most important game of all, part of the game anyway, is when the first players cash out. You got to fill up the coffers as much as possible. The last game is exponentially bigger than the first game. And that's the Titanic analogy. Not all the seats are filled yet. The trick of the Ponzi scheme is to know when to step away for the benefit, for the wealth of those power brokers. This is part of the Magic Act to appeal to lower level players, to bait them in to stay for one more round. It's kind of like, in a way, too, we can also use the analogy of the terrorist. Now, if you're a true terrorist, ideologically minded, Islamic terrorist, for example, your idea is to kill everybody in a very dramatic fashion. Well, think about the Islamic terrorist or a terrorist, we'll say, who wants to send a message. You don't kill everybody. Yeah, you might kill 95 out of 100, and the other 5 are shell-shocked and traumatized, but you want to make sure they're alive to tell the story. Make sure they see all of the horror, all of the blood and guts, and tell the tale. Anyway, at the last stage, when everybody gets paid right before the last Ponzi scheme game in the Ponzi scheme, what happens? Well, you get people all psyched up, ready to make a whole bunch of money. The key guys and all the money and everything, they're into the wind. And the people you brought into the Ponzi scheme, the people who played on your confidence, and you, of course, brought into the Ponzi scheme, you're going to be looked at as a pariah. You're going to lose all credibility with the people you brought into the Ponzi scheme. Well, think about this. What's going to happen to the U.S.? We are being set up to be the absolute scum of the earth. We are being set up to be the most hated nation on the face of the planet. The people behind this, they're intent on having it all. Once they destroy everything, they take everything. A new confidence game is going to start again. So if you think, the death of the dollar means the death of the Fed, and that's a good thing, and hey, what's 5 bankers dead? It's a start. If that's your mindset, you're not going to like what's coming next. What's on the back of the dollar bill? The eagle? No, it's a phoenix. We've seen this happen before. We're going to see it happen again. Folks, let me ask you a question. What was the whole point of holding the Olympics at Sochi? Are you like my wife saying, what in the world are they having the Winter Olympics at Sochi for? And we saw all those horrible images of bathrooms and hotel rooms, and, did it make sense to you? Well, that was to get the eyes of the world on that region. Oh, and speaking of Sochi, the Olympics, they opened, how they light or keep the fire going, but they light the fire in the cauldron with a feather. That represents the feather of a phoenix. Now, you might think, here we go again. Get the guy off his meds. But that's what they believe. Of course, the phoenix is a mythical bird, but the phoenix is self-immolating. It's going to appear, when this is all said and done, it's going to appear that the globalists have burnt their houses down completely. It's going to appear that they've destroyed everything, destroyed the currency that made everything possible. But that's the whole point of the phoenix, as this mythical bird rises out of the ashes. Oh, and by the way, he who has the gold rules. If you own the money, you decide which political order gets into office. Who has the money right now in Ukraine? Well, it seems like the IMF is there. They're picking which politicians are going to be, that are going to back the IMF, the U.S. dollar at the moment, because we're still in this confidence game. They're going to offer stability to the world, and out of this chaos and the finance will determine the actual politicians who are placed in charge And remember, folks, the people behind this, they decide the politics of the future, what emerges from the ashes. So think about the Olympics. Not only was it planned so far in advance to be held in Sochi, it was a number of years. This means that this whole process was a number of years in the planning. Once again, to get people's attention on that area of the world, and of course, the focus, and also to hold Putin to a certain level of behavior, shall we say. This is about a threat that's great enough to bring Russia to war. Think of the scripture, folks. What is that? The hook in the jaw? What's the threat to us? Once again, it's the petrodollar. And as I said earlier, Russia, their dollar. Remember what we did to the Soviet Union when the Soviet Union collapsed. We went after what? We went after their dollar, among other things, but that was really the kicker. We went after their money, their ruble, and we destroyed them from the inside out. There were warehouses full of, well, you get the idea. We went after the ruble. This is a front against Putin, as Syria is a front to Putin. The same intelligence agents that were on the streets in Benghazi are on the streets in Kiev. It's the same players. It's the same agenda. It's just another front. When Putin responds, and he will, he's not necessarily going to come at the United States, NATO, and such directly. Nuke us. He's not going to. Well, anything's possible, but why do that when you can cause the level of suffering we caused the Russians when we took down the Soviet Union and people were dying in the streets and young children were dying in their mother's arms from starvation. Oh, and don't forget the embarrassment of the Russian men. And don't downplay this, folks. Don't downplay this one bit. How would you like to be a man in Russia, or the former Soviet Union as it was going through that transition? How many women were trying to get out of Russia, answering mail order bride requests? Remember the joke? Oh, everyone was laughing in the United States. Oh, let's go get a bride from Russia. Mail order brides. They couldn't even protect their women. That's going to be us in spades. Remember that 90-minute phone call that Putin and Obama reportedly had about Ukraine and Crimea? Would it surprise you that I've got information, first from one source saying that, oh, Obama was on the phone for 90 minutes, but the conversation only lasted 3 minutes. Think about this for a second. Yes, Obama was on the phone for 90 minutes, but the conversation only lasted 3 minutes. When I first heard about the 90 minutes, I thought, wonder what they talked about for 90 minutes. I mean, that's a long, an hour and a half is a long conversation between two leaders of two countries. And they certainly weren't exchanging recipes for, based on the information I have, one source in particular said that Obama was forced to wait 3 minutes. That's how little Putin thinks of Obama. Like a little whipped puppy dog. The other source confirmed that, although would not confirm the time actually spoken. So I've got two different intelligence sources saying that that he was forced to wait.
Yeah. And we have a Washington Times article that was just released about Russia ignoring U.S. threats of isolation. The headline on Drudge is Putin ignores threats from West. And there's several headlines on either side of the aisle as to, what the U.S. should do, what Russia's going to do. Lots of speculation, lots of propaganda, lots of
but they're telling
comments
us
and opinions. Right, you're right. But I'm saying in the news spectrum, if people were to go on the internet, find the mainstream news clips, you get all these differing opinions, differing thoughts from people in these different think tanks, from inside the House of Representatives, the foreign, what do they call them?
Sure,
to the CFR global publications, non-governmental organizations,
right,
giving out propaganda suggestions. One representative said we should sanction Russia economically and make them get rid of them from the G8 process. There's just a wide variety of different opinions, and this is all they are in the news. Mostly are opinions.
Right.
Some have a kernel of truth in them. Some are completely propagandized pieces.
And speaking of kernel of truth, Joe, interesting that you mentioned that, because I was thinking this weekend and talking with someone this weekend, the article by Michael Reagan published last year titled Building on a Kernel of Truth at the American Thinker. Folks, it would do you well to grab a hold of that article, Building on a Kernel of Truth at the American Thinker, print that out, and tuck it away. Save it for reference, because that's even more valid today, contains information that's even more valid today than it was when it was written by Mr. Reagan. Now, a couple of things that I want to point out. If Illuminati, and I was thinking about Nathan Liel and Doc Marquis and other people. Think about this: the message to the public, 90-minute phone call. What is that in Illuminati numerology? Well, that's number 9, because you don't count the zeros, and 9 is the number of Satan. It's telling us that there's a ritual, and the stage is being set for further conflict as well. Think about, well, let me continue with that thought, and then I've got one more I'll come back to. Let me just grab my other part of the notes here, because I did a lot of research about this weekend, and a lot of I attempted to contact I did contact a lot of people, talk to a lot of people about this, just to make sure that I was on the right track. And as a matter of fact, folks, I would urge everybody to listen to, and there is one place on the internet, and I can, at some point tonight I'll put it in the chat room, where you can find the archives to A View from Space, AM 640 Toronto, Saturday night. The talk show host got into the Illuminati quite a bit with reference to Ukraine. And it's amazing, when I was doing my research and listening to that at the same time, things were falling into place, and it made sense now. That's what the scary part, because 5 years ago I would have rejected that just out of hand, but now things are making sense. I'll give you an example real quick. We know that the head of Ukraine, Viktor Yanukovych, fled Ukraine on February 22nd, 2014. All right. Really, there was no reason for him to flee, but he did nonetheless. Just say that there was an overthrow of a pro-Western president on 2/22. Well, what is 2/22/2014 in Illuminati numerology? If you're going to send a message, or if you're part of a play, bear with me. I know, folks, this sounds so extreme, but think about this. It's a double 11 day. 11 is given to an event that's going to directly facilitate the rising of the Antichrist New World Order. That gets a double 11. And that, of course, occurred when Yanukovych ran from Kiev. 222, February 22nd, it's also the 53rd day of the year, which in Illuminati numerology translates to an 8, and of course 8 is the number of the sun worshipper, who is, of course, Satan. 11, by the way, it does translate into a double 11, as I said. It's a day that's always used as a day of power turning points. The Illuminati always leave their occult signature when they carry out an event that enables the Antichrist to rise to power. Oh, the Antichrist is astrologically declared to be of the age of Aquarius, in case you didn't know that. And the Aquarius is the 11th sign of the zodiac. Again, ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't matter what you and I believe. It matters what they believe, because their belief is the driver of their actions. And, of course, if you add up the dates, whether it's in European or English format or American format, 2/22/2014 is really a hidden 13. The events of February 22nd came hours after this agreement was to be eked out with the opposition. Yanukovych ran from the capital, and police symbolically joined the opposition. There appeared to be solidarity for the European Union in the West. Well, there is currently, and there was in Crimea, their passion to remain with Russia, a passion to remain with Russia. Don't forget, the Ukraine consists of 60% Russian. I can go on with that, but I think you get the idea. So coming back down to the ground level here, how is this all going to play out? Well, what can we expect? And when I was talking with Tom Barley, he said, "Well, that's over there. It's it's not going to really affect us here." Oh, yes, it will. Don't forget, the Illuminati control both sides of any conflict. In this case, Putin versus the West. Oh, one more thing I thought was really interesting too is the sons of Noah, or one of the sons of Noah, Japheth. Yeah, excuse me, I can barely talk. That tribe is from the area of Sochi. And isn't it interesting? If the Illuminati are in fact telegraphing moves and talking about or illustrating what's about to take place, note that there's an upcoming movie, Noah, that Paramount Pictures is hyping. They're also hyping by adding small disclaimers that the story is inspired by Noah. It's a true story.
Yeah, and it's getting terrible reviews for the, what would you call the director's interpretations or changes, editing to the actual story and turning it into a message that has nothing to do with the biblical message or truth of Noah's life.
Exactly. But yet, the way they're framing it, they're saying it's true to the essence and values and the cornerstone of the story, and that opens on March 28th. But it's interesting that Japheth lives, or that tribe resides in the area of Sochi and also down into the Georgia, the Republic of Georgia, in and around the Ukraine as well. And remember the problems with Georgia and Russia back, in 2010. At any rate, going back to terra firma here, what can the United States expect here? As we're hearing the beat of the drums of war in the opening salvos and talking about this, well, we can expect. And my question was to my sources, what can we expect? Can we expect some sort of direct attack on America? I mean, are we going to be in World War III tomorrow? Well, it's always possible, or IV, depending on your line of thinking. But just as we attacked Russia asymmetrically. And we hit them in their ability to exist back in the late 80s and early 90s. Oil flow, we attacked, well, by messing in the Ukraine, we are attacking their energy and oil flow at their customer base. Well, if oil can't get through Ukraine, who's going to supply that oil to Europe? Folks, I would expect some sort of response, blowback, if you will, at the periphery of our economic empire. Where are we getting our oil from? Where's our energy? Where are we importing our energy from? Well, think about what's going on in Venezuela and Argentina. Think about what George Soros is doing. Think about North Africa, Libya. Think about an attack on the smooth flow of oil. Don't forget, higher gas prices don't favor the United States. Higher gas prices do, however, favor Putin and Russia. There will be pressure. There will be events taking place at the periphery. That's where we have to look. Oh, and while all of this is going on, we can't take in my view, we cannot take our eyes off of the events taking place here in the United States, because this provides perfect cover, the perfect distraction for an even greater tyrannical clampdown on our rights here in the United States. You want something to happen? Now's the time for something to happen in the United States. While all eyes of the world are on that section of the world, this gives Obama, this gives Valerie Jarrett, this gives David Axelrod the ability to pull something off here. And the fact that our oil, or the Western, or that our naval assets now must be spread out. Our assets, military assets, must be spread out all over. Folks, we were the first Navy to cover the entire world and protect everywhere, which is the reason our dollar is strong. That is going to be taken away from us. There will be a new mob. Well, we're seeing a nation-state, the war at the nation-state level. We're seeing the New York mob versus the Chicago mob as an example. This is what we're seeing. You know, we're also seeing a great bit of in the media, a great bit of cognitive dissonance. If you think your neighbors have cognitive dissonance bad, where it can't happen here, or thinking on that old paradigm, it can't happen here. I was thinking about Brit Hume sitting there at the Fox News panel. Brit Hume, the man who, you know, is the decorum and of course very authoritative, brings reassurance to those who listen. Well, won't people be surprised when people are wrong, when those very people that you put your trust into are incorrect, that yes, it can happen here. Yeah, the Titanic does and can sink. If we were to stand at the send-off of the Titanic saying, hey, that the Titanic could sink. It could sink. People would laugh. People would have laughed and said, oh, come on. And I'm sure there were people saying, oh, that boat's, I mean, there's no unsinkable boat. Well, if there ever was one, it was a Titanic. Well, there's no country that the United States, it can't happen in the United States. Oh, but it can. The collapse might take some time. Events will happen. Just think about this. How long did it take for the Titanic to sink after it hit that iceberg? Was it any question whether that the Titanic was done after it hit the iceberg? Once the damage was surveyed, was there any question that it was going to sink? No. But it took a while to sink. And isn't it interesting that not all of the lifeboats were filled to capacity? In fact, very few were filled to capacity. Why? Cognitive dissonance. It's not going to sink. This is what we're seeing, ladies and gentlemen. Now, we have to use this time, and I'm going to just close this out by saying this. We have to use this time to our benefit. We have to use this time wisely. You and I have to use this time to get right spiritually, mentally, physically, if that's possible for you. Family-wise, we are blessed with the gift of time. Every day is a gift. Use that time as a gift. Use it wisely. Do what you need to do to get ready for bumpy roads. If that means taking your money from the bank and putting it in the mattress just to keep it away from the potential collapse, or keeping gas on hand, or keeping food on hand, or gold and silver, whatever you need to do, whatever fits your particular purpose, whatever fits what you need, your situation, your status in life. That's what you need to be doing right now. And above all, you need to be turning your eyes to God. And, now's the time to prepare. Don't just prepare for one blast of the trumpet. Remember, there's just not one trumpet blast that's referenced, but numerous. And those who survive the first blast of the trumpet are blessed, will be blessed. They'll get a blessing. We'll get a blessing until the next blast. And then surviving that, another blessing. So once again, all of the issues from the Cold War were not played out. We're not resolved, that is. The information in the article, Building on the Kernel of Truth, that's starting to play out. Death Race Damascus, written by yours truly, where I believe it's where I referenced the warm water ports, real crisis in the Black Sea, starting to play out. Folks, again, take this time, get prepared, and know that whatever happens, just because it's over there, yes, it will affect you, it will affect me, it will affect us. And understand that what's happening over there has been long in the planning, just as the Arab Spring was. And understand there will be blowback. Putin is fighting not a boxing match, but a cage match. And we just need to buckle up, put our tray tables in the upright and lock position, and even if necessary, assume crash positions, but be prepared. Things are going to happen. Folks, you're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. I want to thank you so much for listening, Joe. Thanks. It was a quick hour. Can't believe it went that quickly.
Yeah. No, and it's all right. I wanted to hear what your take on today or the Ukraine situation was. As I have some opinions myself, we can get into in the next hour. We'll be right back after these short messages, folks. You're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Was originally created and uploaded to YouTube by the Hagmann and Hagmann channel. To view the full show archives, please visit youtube.com/user/Hagmann and Hagmann.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 2 of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on this Monday, March 3rd, 2014. We have our guest, intelligence insider, who's going to come on and talk to us a little bit about what is unfolding in Russia and Ukraine and what this means for global diplomacy and especially, and more importantly, American futures and all the stuff that is entailed in this one conflict / whatever you want to call it. With that, our intelligence insider W is on with us. It's great to have you back.
Good to get a chance to talk to your audience there and take a moment with them. I just wanted to point out one quick thing. Of course, Doug, you've been covering the situation all the way back to Benghazi, its connection to Syria, and of course your article, Death Race Damascus, which you mentioned a few minutes ago. And for a lot of people, they think that the Ukraine is actually now something totally different. the reality is, and you alluded to it a few minutes ago when you were talking, the Ukraine is a continuation of this same conflict. What was being done by NATO and the Western forces, including the U.S., was trying to move the front back out of the Mideast so that Putin's forces, and Putin was bogged down closer to home and not able to project power down to Syria. And all of the machinations that have been in play in the Ukraine were intended to play through and prevail before the Olympics, and then Putin, by the time he got through the Olympics, would already kind of be locked up. If you remember, Syria, there was 4 attempts to get us into Syria and to begin that conflict all the way back to the time period of Benghazi, immediately thereafter, and then the spring of the following year, and then later in the early summer, and again in last September. And when that didn't happen as intended, and originally the Ukraine situation, it would have been a 1-2 punch. And of course, he's bogged down in Syria, we're taking him on full force, and all of a sudden he comes into the winter, he can't get stuff out of Russia to assist those forces in Syria. Why? Because the Black Sea is locked up. It's no good in the winter. That whole area is difficult to work in. And by the time he got to spring, and then he's got a Ukraine situation, he's backed up to the moon. Well, at the end of the day, and we discussed this, I don't know that we said it to your audience precisely, but between you and I've been saying to you all along, Putin is played rope-a-dope all this time. To get to the Olympics, he did a Muhammad Ali. He tucked his elbows in, he tucked his chin down, and he took every blow the West could throw at him, that NATO could throw at him, that the European Union could throw at him. He took every blow. And when the Olympics happened, he alone stood there. No other Western leaders attended in those opening ceremonies. He was by himself. But he took all the punches, he took all the ridicule, he took everything, and he made it. And he survived all the early rounds in this contest. But now, and as I've said to you privately, and I don't remember if I said it to your audience or not, but Putin, as soon as the Olympics were over, he drops his gloves in this boxing match that we're engaged in, where our side, our fearless leaders, have been using boxing gloves and throwing sissy punches, and he's absorbing the blows. Putin got through the Olympics. He drops the gloves. He comes out of his corner. He comes straight over to us and lets us know this is a bare-knuckle fight. It's not a boxing ring. It's a cage fight. And by the way, it's till only one man is standing. Now, the problem is that from our side and our fearless leader, he's got chicken legs. This is a cage fight, man. Hands, feet, legs, knees, everything. And what is our fearless leader doing? What's he look like? What is his symbolic pose that he shows to the world every time you see him? Chin up, nose in the air, proud. Well, what does the scripture say? Pride goeth before the fall. He's displaying that Western arrogance, that historic arrogance that he thinks that we're made up of and that we want to show, that chin-up type of thing. And the reality is, here we are in a cage fight, and our leader has a glass jaw. and you're going up against somebody who's fighting for their very existence to stay alive, and our guys are coming into it expended, tired, listless, with a glass jaw stuck up in the air like an open invitation. Punch me out. We're in serious trouble here. And Putin sees it. He sees the vulnerability. He has waited for this moment. We've punched out. We're exhausted. And he's just starting. Now, the problem with that region is, while everybody's saying Ukraine, 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 it's really not about the Ukraine. It's about Crimea. It's about that peninsula, which is their place where they flow all of their supplies and materials and everything out to Syria and the Mediterranean. And during those winter months, what they do during the spring, summer, fall is they move supplies to Syria, classically, to the warm water port, and then they continue to use that to ferry things throughout the remainder of the year. Now, he's coming up on the best time of the year to use and operate and work out of there. When you mention the 6 months that it took us to get ready to go take care of Saddam, it took a long time. Even though we told them we're coming, it took a very long time with all of our infrastructure, supply lines, personnel, fresh equipment to get in position and get ready to go take on Saddam, a third world country. Yeah, the fourth largest tank army in the world. Yeah, whatever. Okay. Well, Putin now has 9 months to get ready in the Mideast to resupply. And you think those warships we're sending into the Black Sea he's going to sail right past him and give him the finger. Yeah, do something. Try me. He sees himself as Russia's John Wayne, protector of the motherland. He sees us, and it's still fresh in their mind, how humiliated and degraded they were. Can you imagine what it must have felt like to watch your leader get on his knees practically and call Bush? Yes, Mr. Gorbachev on the line. Mr. President, we could sure use some help. Well, I see they're all still up, and there's still guards in there. We told you when we needed. How hat in hand did he have to be? And how much did he have to suck it in and swallow his pride to make that call in the first place? And now, do you think that they're going to back down after the degradation, after being dragged through? It's like Germany after World War I. And by the way, why couldn't this president of ours go into Syria? Because the public wouldn't dare with him. Well, let's think about this for a second. So you need the public support. You need congressional support. Remember Gulf Wars 1 and 2 and 9/11 and everybody flying the flag and we're all with you and the propaganda worked. Where's Putin right now? His Duma just gave him a good-to-go pass, whatever you need. His public is completely behind him. While we're, our fearless leader is chicken legs. If he throws the ball at the opening of the World Series, the third base umpire has to duck. He might get hit. It's not going over the base. And that's our guy? He's going to throw a straight punch? Are you kidding me? Against this crowd? So now you look at where we're sitting. Russia, tuned up, primed up, ready to go, military behind him, people behind him. And they feel that they have been abused. The propaganda within Russia has been fed from our side because we've given them all the ammo they need. We got Western operatives in there doing the dirty work and being caught. The people in Russia know exactly where this is coming from, just like the people in Syria. It's a revolution. It's the people right there. It is not. It was people out of North Africa that we shipped out through Benghazi, through Libya, from all the region in the area. We shipped them in there to start the revolution. And you know that. Everybody knew it, except for maybe the American public. We picked a fight. And he took all the blows. And now, here we are. And he's dropped the gloves, he's stopping the rope-a-dope, and he's ready for battle. And our guys are, well, I thought this was a boxing match. This is a bare-knuckle fight? Let me out of here. Let me out of this cage. And the door's locked. We're in it. But he's fighting for his life, and he knows it. We're fighting for our life, and the public hasn't even got a clue, just like your neighbor, just like most of the listeners. They don't even understand what's at stake. And we've been telling them. That's what Kernel of Truth is all about. A year and a half ago, telling you this is all about your dollar, your petrodollar. He's not going to come at us on our strength. What army goes after another army on its strongest point? You pick a weak spot. The soft underbelly of the Americans' ability to project power out into the world, to get our way wherever we go with our IMF and everybody else. It's your dollar. The good faith and credit of the American dollar. We can back you up. We'll give you what you need. Your dollar is being undermined intentionally. Pulling this off, at the end of the day, I'm not actually upset with Obama. I'm not upset with him personally. This is way beyond him. It's the people pulling the strings past him. He's just a straw man. And at the end of the day, we're just a straw country. Why? Because those internationalist, globalista bankers out of London, the city within the city, have a plan. This is all part of the plan to sink the unsinkable Titanic America to the bottom of the sea. And then, well, if America isn't there, what happens to the world? Freedom, safety in the free world, trade. Nobody's going to be able to work together. And out of the darkness, out of the shadows, comes those rescuers, those people to save the day. Well, who are they? The people that planned this whole thing. That's the whole point of this world stage at Sushi with those globalistas, with all the world's attention there, and they have the opening and closing ceremonies. The games are for fun, but the opening and closing ceremony, that's their little message. That's what it's all about while the whole world's watching. And what did they tell you? This is the moment when empires will die. That's the whole thing with the cauldron and lighting the fire of the cauldron with a feather from the phoenix. And the bird is burned up and consumed. All of these Western powers. It's not just America that's going to get consumed in what's coming. It's all the economies of the whole planet that will be taken down with it, because America's dollar is supporting all these economies everywhere. It's the reserve currency. And when it goes down, all the economies go down with it. And then out of the ashes, these people have already pre-planned. They have a solution. It's part of the game. They keep doing it and redoing it. The Roman Empire, the British Empire, the Greek Empire, whatever. It's just new and re-improved. 99 and 44, 100% pure. It's the same bullshit over and over and over. They do it every 200 years. So empires die, and now a new one's going to come in, reinvent it. And they'll put on different masks, but it's the same grifter families. And they're going to pull the same shenanigans again. And they'll take the population down to make it manageable, and then they'll cull the herd, and they'll start over, new and improved. And that's the whole point. Your audience is a very astute audience. They are not listening to this program unless they are, because they have to find it. It's not just on the radio when you're going down the road, coming or going from work. You got to find this show and be there on purpose. They're seeking out your show because they're not getting the real news from all the talking heads everywhere else. They're afraid to cover this. Fox News didn't cover Kernel of Truth. They had it. They sat on it for 3 weeks and didn't want to publish it because it was too edgy. So Mike had to take it somewhere else to get it published. And the point is, when people show up at your show, they then have to take the information that they get, that by some divine providence, they have been led, directed to your show, to the people that you bring to your show, those information sources, and they get the real word on what's really going on, an understanding of the inner machinations, the backroom deals, what's happening. And then they have to make a decision. Is it just interesting? Is it just somewhere out in the future, or whatever? Or is it real? And if it is real, if they believe it truly is real, that what we're talking about is the real deal, then they have to kind of start processing, okay, and what will I do? And they have to ask for direction from God. What do I personally have as options to do? Where do I start? And not just sit there. Start taking actions, because things you do right now that are relatively inconvenient, but still simple, we still have our infrastructure working. But you have to remember, on the Titanic, well, they were still serving liquor at the bar, and there was still music playing in the background, and it was still warm inside the cabins, and there was, deck was kind of moving a little funny in a different direction, but, still good. And a lot of people stood there, well, I don't want to get in the lifeboat. It's so cold. I mean, the boat's not sinkable. We all know that. So, I ain't going to stay here where it's warm for the time being. If it really gets serious, well, then we'll start thinking about moving the lifeboats. If you wait, you might be dead. You probably will be dead. And I don't just mean it physically, but you'll be at the mercy of whatever it is that's coming ahead. And this isn't about getting ready for Russian invasion and the end of the world and everything else. This is about surviving a collapse of infrastructure here in the country, a collapse of government. If the dollar doesn't work right, what's the government going to do? Well, they're not going to go away. They're just going to be a bit heavy-handed, trying to keep things in order while people are shifting. So you got to be able to survive that 90, 180, maybe 365 days before the dust settles and you can come out to the other side and start to put things back together again. And by the way, these people, even though they've succeeded in reinventing the world numerous times in the politics and the countries, there's no guarantee they'll get it right. And I don't think they will get it completely right. So the whole point is, who's going to put this back together again after all these pointy heads blow it up, screw it up, crash it? Somebody's got to survive through to the other side with their wits about them and some kind of community and infrastructure to hold it together to wade through to get to the other side of this. And let's not be silly. I'm not actually worried about Russian troops and Chinese troops and all the other stuff right now. I'm just worried about that people understand that their job might not work completely correctly. Their power may go through some glitches. So just take basic precautions and get ready to be able to weather some kind of a calamity that is not natural and it's no accident. These people have a plan and they're making it happen. They've said it 1 billion times, New World Order, New World Order, New World Order. It's right there on every dollar bill that you handle. A new order for the ages. Out of chaos, order. Telling you what they're going to do. They're not kidding around. And if you're not paying attention, then it's on you. So your audience gets it. They feel it in their guts. But I still detect they're a little bit mesmerized by this cognitive disorder that it's hard to process that it might be radically different enough, whatever's coming, that your normal responses will not be adequate to the task. So you have to begin to start rethinking how you act, how you function, what you're doing, what you're prioritizing, and trying to get in a position where you have a backup plan, a get-out-of-the-way plan. The Scripture says, a wise man sees trouble and gets out of the way. All I'm telling you, all Doug's telling you, all any of these other sources from this kind of a mindset are telling you is, I see trouble. I see serious, serious trouble, and in some cases, life and death trouble. Get out of the way. Just step out of the middle of the traffic and get out of the way for a few minutes. Don't stand there with, doe eyes and, I hear squealing brakes and the headlights are coming right at me. I wonder what that's about. Pay attention. And if you don't have a plan, prayer, man. Ask God. He's more than willing. He's waiting for you to seek his counsel. Every person in your audience, there is a way for them to take action that is godly, that is divinely inspired. But they got to ask. They got to seek it. God is as serious as you are. If you're serious and if you understand this, you're here at this show for a reason. Wake up! Wake up! Wake up! This is a critical moment. There's plenty of time to get prepared. This is going to play out over a very long period of time, probably into next year. It isn't over in a week or a month. Some of that is disinformation that's being fed into these kind of communities that we're part of in order to screw people's minds up. Tune it out and seek counsel from on high for you yourself. Not reading other people's mail, not listening to other messengers. Every person in your audience is a different situation. So they need direct input from God, be it from his word, from his divine messengers, through other mechanisms, by a visitation of the Holy Spirit, to find the right actions and path for them and their family. But God's as serious as they are. God's as serious as you are. So get serious. This is the time to get serious. Right now, get serious. Start getting serious. Write it down somewhere in front of you. Write it on your refrigerator. I am getting serious now. I'm serious now. This is serious. I'm getting serious. God, I'm listening. What is it you're trying to tell me? What am I supposed to be doing right now? I can't tell you. Some of these other hosts can help you, give you at least some framework for some thought, get a seed out there into your mind for your contemplation, but it's still on you for your personal situation. And if you read your neighbor's mail, if you try to get the notes off the kid's desk next to you, then you're probably going to get it wrong. This is the moment. These events are intended to get your attention, even from on high, from divine, so that you're not being lost in this. Pay attention. This is serious. I hope that helps a bit.
Wow.
I just believe at this moment, when you have a serious situation, Doug, that's when you don't start running down the street waving your arms in the air and yelling and screaming. That's the moment when you take deep breath and you focus. And most of your people have had at some point in their life some serious incident happen. I mean life or death serious, where they were present or in the area or something. And some people they just locked up, or they're hysterical, or whatever, or they don't know what to do. And there's always a guy there that gets sharper and he gets more focused because he understands the gravity of the moment and he takes control. In every community, God has placed those people. Your listeners are those people. Get serious right now. Pay attention. Get focused. Get real. And start seeking the mind of God. What is your part in this? Don't just, the sky is falling and I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do. I got to dig deeper in my basement to get my shelters covered. I got to get more peaches in the pantry. Come on, man. This is going to take more than just a few more peaches in the pantry to survive. Start thinking a little bit different. And don't just think about yourself surviving. How's your family going to survive? Even the extended. How are you going to, if your neighbors don't make it, you're probably not going to make it. Talking to your neighbors like Doug is. Somewhere in here, Doug, I'm telling you, somewhere in here, your neighbor, for all that he's blowing this whole thing off, something's going to happen. And all of a sudden, it's going to be crystal clear in his mind. He's going to realize, that Doug maybe wasn't there as I thought he was. And maybe I had to rethink that. Be ready for it. We're going to have people coming to us because we were the ones talking about it. And while you sounded like a nut to your family or friends, you're going to start sounding less and less like a nut by the day. If you're getting your wits about you, if you're running down the street Chicken Little and the Russians are going to be here tomorrow and, I'm going to have to shoot it out with the Russians in the end of my block and we're getting tires together, we're going to block it in with cars, we're going to shoot it out with their drones, and it's going to be, that's what we're going to do. Give me a break. What's ahead for us is a lot more practical for the time being. Steve's not wrong that there's probably real trauma somewhere further down, but that's a couple of gyrations further into this thing. And if you're only playing for that end, you're probably not going to make it anyway. This next one, this is a little different. If you can get on a lifeboat, you got a good shot. You can get a good solid piece of wood, you got a good shot. But, right now, you don't move calmly and slowly to lifeboats. You move decisively and, swiftly without tripping, and you get to, some kind of refuge, safety, whatever. Get out of the way. Start thinking, how am I going to get out of the way of this so I have at least some kind of resources to work with to be able to, get to the other side of the instant crisis that, a wise man who's paying attention, who's just listening to the news, would know is just ahead. You don't have to be Nostradamus to see what's coming. But you do have to be connected with the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, to get your insight, your direction for what you personally have options to do and need to do. I hope that helps your audience. I felt that we needed to at least, get people think again. Think, take a deep breath. Right now you have a moment to take a deep breath and think about it and contemplate, okay, so what am I going to do if this starts to come unraveled? If gas prices go up again, what's going to be the impact on my house, my job? What do I need to get out of the way? What do I have that's not going to be valuable in this coming environment that I need to lighten the load with to prepare for what's coming before everybody else tries to do the same thing at exactly the same time?
That's a very good point. Very good point. You could have a garage full of toys or an attic full of toys or whatever, a basement full of toys and or useless items, and that won't help you a bit when things start to break apart.
Well, and again, I mean, you know, I don't know what each individual needs to do. I only know that God knows. And I'm not telling anybody in your audience what to do. I'm just stating that this is part of something much bigger that will take quite some time to play out, that has actually been in play coming for a very long time. Go back to Kernel of Truth. A year and a half ago, that article tells you, like a roadmap, what's coming. Dismantled shells of those dolls that we dismantled when we tore apart the Soviet Union are all coming back together again. Here we are. Right back where we were 20 years ago. It's amazing. And everybody thought it was all over. It's done. It's right there. So you've been warned. You've been, and people saw that coming then. So here we are now, and we see the next step coming here also. Putin has to act. A hook is placed in his nose. He's drugged down to the Middle East. Two things are there. He doesn't want to go, but he's made to go. Because if he doesn't go, he doesn't survive. The economics in Russia right now, they cannot survive without the oil flow. They cannot survive without the Crimea and with Syria. Those dots are connected. And Turkey in between, which they turned. That's what the meeting was in Benghazi. If you remember, the last meeting of Ambassador Stephen's life on this earth was with the Turkish Consul General. And what was that meeting about? How would you like to have been a fly on the wall? And what did he tell him? What was in play? The Russians pressuring inside the political community in Turkey, trying to flip them away from NATO and using information that was shocking to turn them away from NATO in the West. And you know what? It's exactly what's happening. They're siding up with Russia. But why? They're in the pinch. You got the Crimea on one side and you got Syria on the other. What's Turkey going to do? And Iran on the other. They're in a bind. They better change sides, because if they want to survive, they better be with those guys or get walked over. And they don't want to get walked over. So that's all flipping. We saw it coming. And now, knowing that Putin has to, for survival's sake, respond to these attacks on their ability to do business into the West, on their ability to take their resources to customers, on their ability to field a navy. That hook that's pulling him down to conflict also has prize. Because in the scripture, it also says that he's drugged down by a hook, that those nations are, to take a spoil, if it were possible. Well, what's the spoil? We're vacating that whole region. We're pulling up stakes and leaving. In fact, we're not just pulling up stakes and leaving. Karzai's kicking us in the butt. Get your sinking butt out the door. Told him this weekend, get out of here. Pakistan, get your butt out of here. Saudi Arabia, we'd rather do business with China. They're willing to put their navy in here and protect our resources coming and going and pay us with real currency that's gold-backed. Saudi Arabia cuts a deal with China a couple months back. Why? Because we wouldn't do their bidding. Timely. So don't let the screen door hit you on the butt on the way out. We're creating a vacuum. Putin sees spoils to be gotten in the Mideast. He's being drugged down because it's a survival thing. It's a fight for your life. Doug, I told you, in South America during the drug wars, from time to time, and it's painful even to just talk about it, men would sharpen axes. They'd wear nothing but a loincloth. They'd come into a room full of people. And these drug kings would throw $50,000 to $100,000 on the table in the middle of the room, on the floor in the middle of the room. And with spectators, 30, 50, 100 people in a small room. They would have a fight to the death with axes sharpened like razor blades. Only one man could leave with the money. It was a fight to the death, but whoever got the money, that was more money than he'd make in his entire life, in 5 lifetimes. So he either left on a piece of wood and was thrown ignominiously into some ditch, or he left a king for his family, mighty conqueror. There was all there, the hook and the treasure. This administration has gotten us into a cage fight. Those people pulling the strings on our government gotten us into a cage fight with somebody who is fighting for life and treasure. And we show up, field our fighter with his chicken legs, can't even throw a straight punch, he might knock himself out, sticks his glass chin in the air and asks for it. When we wake up, let's hope we're at least in a lifeboat and not just drifting in the ice-cold sea, waiting to freeze to death. Pay attention. We are in a critical fight, and what's at the end of this isn't pretty. And we were put here long time ago. This ship was designed for destruction. We are the straw man. People talk about, well, if the United States wasn't here, well, the free world, who would do it? Who would take care of the world? Well, it was the plan all along. We're the straw man. They're going to sink us, and then out of the shadows, the world calls. Somebody help us. Somebody help us. Somebody come and bring order back to the chaos. How can the world function without America and the dollar? And then they bring their new currency in, reinvented. That's what they showed you at Sochi. A cauldron lit on fire, and the phoenix immolated, self-immolated. And then out of the ashes, reborn to live again. They've killed empires for, millennia, and then reinvented them. What's London? The new Rome. When London died, when Rome died, you thought Rome went away. No, Rome was moved to London. New Londinium. And it's a foil. It's a ruse. It's a sneak. And you thought you were ahead of the world, and they made you feel that way. It's like when you play pool with a real pool shark. They let you win a few rounds. You're so smart, and you're going to, and then, it's up to bet. Okay, man, you got me that time, but I think I can beat you. They're suckering you into it. And then at the critical moment, when all the money's on the table, they show you what they really got for skill. These guys have suckered us into this position. Why aren't all the big banks here in the States? Why aren't they there in New York? Because that's not the real seat of power. It's a ruse. And at the given moment, at the precise right moment, they're going to sink this ship. And then they're going to come out of the shadows with their new reinvented world order, which is really just the old order with fresh paint. New masks, same players, some different names. The same grifter families. It's all by design. Even what's going on in the Ukraine, it's all by design. They've put Putin in this position. He has to do what he is going to do next, because it's fight or die. Well, if you're going to fight, there's the treasure right there. Might as well fight for all it's worth. And every one of your listeners, wherever they are in the world, need to be thinking in those kind of terms. Even for themselves, understand what's at stake. A lot of people won't make it through to the other side, not because they couldn't, but because they wouldn't take and think straight. They couldn't shake themselves awake. You ever been in one of those dreams where you're half awake and half asleep and you can't quite get yourself to wake up, and you're awake but you're not awake? That's where a lot of your listeners are right now. Wake up. Your life's on the line. You're in instant danger. Your family's well-being is on the line. And you can do just a few things to make it so you can get through to the other side of the next crisis. Don't worry about the crisis 3 up. Those crises, God will prepare you for those at the time. But show a willingness to take that step. Shows that you're moving closer to God and seeking his counsel. And God is more than willing, more than able to reach out and pull you in. Don't just sit there, I don't know what to do. Well, it's going to be so horrible. And that's part of my concern when we talk about, they're going to be invading and the EMP is going to stop everything. People just, they don't know what to do. They can't think anything that's big enough to do anything to protect for that. So they just lock up. That's why you got to seek God's counsel for you. He can start where you're at and get you where he wants you to be. And what you have to apply is faith. Either you got faith in God or you don't. The activator to get God to do things to help you is faith. And if you remember what I said when we talked a few weeks ago, a whole crowd of people, they have the Son of the living God, Christ, right there in their midst. Then they're all asking questions, they're listening to what he's got to say, and suddenly he stops everything. And he says, "Who touched me? Who touched me?" And everybody's like, "What are you talking about? Everybody's touching you. They're all pressing in on you. This whole crowd is jostling us against you." No. I felt power go out from me. Someone touched me. And the woman spoke up. She was shy and she was apparently retreating. She was embarrassed. She thought she was being called out for doing something wrong. And she says, "I did, Lord, I did." What, the crowd wants to know. What are you talking about? You touched him. I had an issue of blood. I was sick. And I touched but the hem of your garment, and I was healed. She knew that if she could just touch but the hem of his garment, that she could be healed. And she had the faith to believe that she would be healed. all those other people that were touching on the Lord, touching not just on his garment, not just on the hem, but brushing up against his shoulders, probably brushing up against his hair and trying to reach out and touch and everything else. He was like a rock star. They got nothing because they weren't touching him in faith. Shoot, the devil stood right there with Christ and tempted him 3 times. But it didn't change him. Why? Because he didn't have faith. It wasn't a saving situation. He was there to taunt. Lots of people come to God and they're just, well, I need this, God, and I want you to show me what this is all about. But they haven't got any faith in it. And if you don't know what faith is, ask God. I need faith. I don't know what faith is. It is a gift. God can provide it. You're going to have faith, trust in God to get you through this. You could have all the treasure. You could have all the supplies. You could have the escape map. But the scripture says, though ye build your nests in the heavens, space shuttles and space stations and everything else, I will drag you down to the earth for judgment. Though you build in caves of the earth, refuges, I will shake the earth and drive you to the surface for judgment. The only way to survive what's coming is not just going to be with prayer, not just going to be with, scriptures. Shoot, the devil was quoting scriptures to Christ. Doesn't the word say this and this and this? The scripture is better than you know them. You know every scripture in there. But it wasn't saving knowledge. Our winning card is faith. And right now, in this country, and in every country on this planet, with the challenges that are ahead, with the drama that's just around the corner, you're going to need faith to survive through it. And action. So as you're acting and doing that which God is showing you to do, that's an exercise of faith. Launch out, step forward, take those first steps. By your actions, faith without action is dead. Not just the actions, it's actions taken in faith. That God, when a farmer plants a seed, what happens? It goes in the ground and dies. It's God that brings it back to life and raises it up and grows it into something that makes provision. The farmer has faith that instead of just cooking the seed and eating it, if he plants it and works with God and does his stuff, he doesn't just leave it in the barn. He has to go through the plowing and the planting and the weeding, all the things to make it possible for that to grow. But he does it in faith that God will make it grow and provide the rain and the sunshine, and with his labor, he'll have a return. He'll have something to work with. Start this process now. Start taking action now, but mix it with faith, because faith is the activator that brings God to action in your life, that brings growth in whatever your endeavors are, and multiplies it, not just to make provision for you yourself, but for your family and for those around you, so that you can be a light to the world in this moment of pending darkness. this trauma, this drama that's ahead. Every person listening right now is here for a reason. You were born for this day. It's going to be the greatest, most dramatic moment in the history of this world. Never before and never again will these dramas play out like they're going to right now, and you get the front row seat. You gotta start thinking in those kind of terms. And then, what's my part, God? I need to do. And your part may be the smallest part. You may just be the kid who brings loaves and fishes, and you got a few extras from your mom in the lunch bag in case anybody else needed a couple. And you had them, and you're there in the meeting, and nobody else brought loaves and fishes. Nobody else brought anything for this whole crowd. And God decides we need a miracle. The man of God decides that there's those that are hungry. And they search the whole place, and only one person has provision, but it's just enough for him and maybe one or two other people, a couple loaves and fishes. But that's where the faith comes in, and the prayer of faith, and the blessing. Just because you can only provide a little bit. I remember your caller, Doug, and she's probably listening right now, God bless her, who was storing up canned meats and planning on feeding her whole city. Well, you know what? She might just get that opportunity. With God's blessing, who knows what's going to happen? He fed the thousands with just a few loaves and fishes. 12 baskets full with extra left over. And that didn't go to waste, I guarantee you. It wasn't made to be wasted. It was spread out through the crowd even after it was collected. This is a moment when we're going to get opportunities to see actions on the part of our Christian brothers and sisters based on faith that will stun all of those who are watching us, who have gone before us, that whole assembly of saints, as they watch, because Christ himself said, greater works will you do even than these, the works that he'd already done. There is people in your audience right now who God is going to give the faith, the miracle of faith, the blessing of faith, at the instant that it's needed to ask for and receive miraculous deliverance, miraculous provision, miraculous insight and direction that will save lives, that will preserve life, that will bless, that will protect his church. Because at the end of the day, for all the machinations of the enemy, God is not going to leave his church unprotected. And by faith, those of your listeners who choose to engage and live a life of faith, starting right now, they will be the ones that God will use to do great things and to oppose the enemy and oppose the Antichrist and oppose their minions and oppose those demons, those devils of darkness, as they try to do all the evil that they intend to do. Well, they can intend to do all the evil they want, and God has given them permission. But you know what? He's also given provision for his servants to come against evil. So do it. And start with the first step of faith. Take action. Begin to prepare so that you can be part of the solution and not just more dead weight on the end of the rope that we're all trying to pull to keep this thing going. Your audience is that audience. Of all those audiences, look at all the shows on radio. And your audience is the audience that's dealing from a Christian church-themed standpoint. Largest audience of its type maybe in the world. This is your wake-up moment. Wake up and let's get to business here. I know we're at the top of the hour, Doug. I appreciate the chance to talk to all of our brethren, those of you who are still on the fence, wondering if we're just a bunch of nuts or kooks out here. The only thing I'd say, God reveals himself by his Holy Spirit. Ask God. God, I don't know. It doesn't feel real to me. I don't know who you are. I'm not understanding this. God is more than faithful to reach out to an honest request. If you're honest with God, he's God. He can make himself real. Ask him. And ask him to come into your life and begin to direct you where he wants you to go and how he wants you to move in what's to come. Join us. There's plenty of room. Water's great.
Amen. Amen, brother. Wow. Powerful, as always. We are at the top of the hour. I want to thank you for your time and thank you for your insight. Very good, as always.
Of course.
God bless you, my friend.
Of course.
We'll talk soon.
All right. Good night.
Good night. Folks, that was a very good friend, a gentleman that I certainly respect, admire, have come to know. And I could tell you this, his information, if he told me right now that outside my door was a spaceship, I'd believe him. I said that only to tell you how much stock I put into that man.
Ladies and gentlemen, to the third and final hour of this Monday edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. We're going to be taking your calls, and we're going to hit some news stories. Aside from the Ukraine-Russia situation, and we'll take calls right after that. So we're going to hit a few quick stories here that I see as very important. First, I'm going to start with Bitcoin. I don't know, we've talked about the Bitcoin filing for bankruptcy. Well, this out of the Wall Street Journal today. Almost $500 million worth of Bitcoins vanish. Mt. Gox says that it lost over 750,000 of customers to Bitcoin fraud. And they said this once dominant exchange for Bitcoin trading on Friday said more than 470 million of the virtual currency had vanished from its digital coffers, and kicking into high gear a search for the missing money by victims of cyber sleuths. This Wall Street Journal article goes to say. And I just want to say, we talked about this Bitcoin. People wondered if it was a forerunner to a one world currency because it was digital, and we're wondering about the safety and reliability of this Bitcoin. Some said that it was, worthless. Basically, you can't hold it. It's not worth anything. Some said that it was a great way to exchange and compete against the other currencies of the world. Well, it looks like it's turned out to just be a big Ponzi scheme by the looks of things, and this is something we can get into more also. On another note, out of D.C., in the green energy sector, a report came out today that the District of Columbia's green energy approved buildings are using more energy than those of the old means. Coal, natural gas, etc. Washington, D.C. may have the highest number of certified green buildings in the country, but its research by the EPA, or Environmental Policy Alliance, suggests it might not be doing much good. And it goes on to say that data released the first round of energy usage by city officials Friday and found that large privately owned buildings that received green energy certification, leadership, and energy design actually use more energy than the buildings that didn't receive this green stamp of approval. And we've talked about in depth about this green energy sector, how they have ended the coal-powered production of energy and are moving towards a solar, these different types of they call clean green energies. Companies like Solyndra and many others that have siphoned millions, if not billions, of taxpayer money to these big projects, usually who had board of directors and owners that were part of Senate and House of Representative family members. And it's interesting how all this money got siphoned out, and we're seeing that even those buildings that implemented this green energy push are using more energy than they would have if sticking with regular means. But that's not the issue. The issue is global warming and the carbon dioxide emissions, as they say. And I think Steve Jobs today said, any climate change deniers, please do not buy stock in Apple. Pretty interesting quote from him. And also on energy, the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, has released new fuel standards.
Wait a second. What does that mean? Any climate deniers don't buy stock in Apple?
In Apple, correct. Steve Jobs gave a speech.
Okay. But, I mean, what does that mean?
Climate change deniers, please do not buy shares in Apple. I'm sorry, it's Apple's.
Is it when you say
Cook.
Steve? Okay, I was going to say Steve Jobs.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Might be speaking from the grave, but
yeah.
I mean, I understood where you're going with that.
But in the article it says eyewitnesses said Cook, who succeeded Steve Jobs as boss of the technology giant in 2011, was visibly angry as he took on a group of right-wing investors during a question and answer session at the shareholders meeting, where apparently this was Steve Jobs' sentiments as well, passed down. But the company leader of Apple, Tim Cook, says that, and he shocked some, apparently, according to this article, within the U.S., gave an impassioned attack on the single-minded pursuit of profit and direct appeal to climate change deniers do not buy shares in his firm.
So it's nothing to do with the value or anticipated value or whatever. This is just it seems to me a knee-jerk.
If they actually
kind of a knee-jerk reaction to a couple of to a sentiment which was not well received at Apple, as opposed to a warning about something that they're planning on doing, some type of event. Interesting nonetheless.
Yes.
The way that it's interesting to see. And if look, I mean, the climate change, isn't it interesting how it's gone from global warming to climate change, and
the climate change deniers to environmental terrorists, people who do not believe in the scientific data of climate change, man-made climate change at least.
Well, and I'm sure there is man-made climate change, just not in the way people think. Through the spraying, aerial spraying, and such. But that aside, well, it's interesting. Let's go on.
And I just wanted to mention that. But this EPA released new fuel standards, and they're issuing stricter rules for sulfur emissions in cars on Monday today. A move supported by the auto industry and environmentalists, but opposed by oil refiners. The regulations require oil refiners to remove all sulfur from gasoline, and it will mandate car makers to phase in cleaner technology and energies. The EPA said the new rules will reduce smog and respiratory problems, saving $6.7 billion and adding $19 billion in economic benefits from improved productivity.
And of course, those numbers are just bogus. They're just BS numbers. You've got to understand.
I mean, look at the figures.
Oh, man.
Look at government figures. How many were going to be enrolled in Obamacare in the first 3 months, and how many were going to, Solyndra, and we talked about these other green energy companies, how much of a difference this was going to make, and all these different opinion statistics and polls and even studies, more importantly, by the government, have all turned out to just be, as of late, complete misinterpretations and misleading of the public's trust into thinking, going the smart meters, going smart cars is going to be a great way to continue to reduce these carbon emissions. At the same time, I would argue that the same level of destruction that they thought carbon emissions were causing the environment harm, these EPA people and their fuel restrictions. We talked about the ethanol and the using food as part of a fuel additive.
How insane is that?
Right. So we know these Environmental Protection Agency, the USDA, these people aren't trying to keep America out of disease from foods. They're not trying to keep the EPA is not keeping the environmental area safe. It's implementing Agenda 21 at this point, and on board with the whole agenda of we have the environmental justice plan linked up with Health and Human Services. We see what kind of monster that this agency has turned into. And not only that, it's become an enforcement agency.
Isn't it interesting that over the years, even before Agenda 21, the globalists, we've sold factories, we've sold our buildings to China, we've had our infrastructure ripped out. Really, in the United States, we are well where the Soviet Union was once at. We just don't realize it, or the people don't realize it, and it's being done in the name of environmental protection. And don't forget, the EPA was an entity that was birthed under Nixon, and of course the globalists. And think of who surrounded Nixon: Kissinger, Brzezinski, other people, other globalists. This is a globalist agenda. It's and it's to our peril. That's all I've got to say.
And one last story here before we move to the calls, and you can call in at 661-244-9839. That's 661-244-9839, and we'll take your calls in the order that we receive them after this story here. And I found this story to be one of the craziest of the day, aside from all the war propaganda stories. Gay and lesbian troops perform in drag on American military base for the first time ever.
There are no words. There just simply are no words.
At the Kadena Air Base in Japan, troops that are based there say they know how to party. On Saturday,
I'm hearing words. I'm sorry.
Gay and straight service members applied some of their finest makeup and lip-synced to I Want to Dance with Somebody in what is believed to be the first drag queen and king show on American military bases. The show was thrown in support for the base's recently formed OutServe SLDN chapter, a nonprofit advocacy group for the Army's LGBT community. Navy Lieutenant Marissa Green told Stars and Stripes she only expected to sell 75 tickets to the variety show, but ended up selling more than 400 in 10 days. The event went through the same approval process as other non-base fundraisers go through, with only caveat being that it was not allowed to be labeled as a drag show.
But don't even try to bring your Bible onto an air base or anymore, or certainly don't dress up or don't. Okay.
And this is a military. This is an army. This is a culture that claims to be one nation under God. This is a nation that does a lot of what it does and uses God or the Lord or peace as justification for what it does. Yet how can this country not be destroyed when we have open drag queen performances on military bases performed by people who are made up of the military itself, choosing to dress in drag, not because it's something they're doing for fun, but it's part of who they are now. And they say in this article, Jordan Volansky says, the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell has made it possible for events like this to occur. And I'll end there with that.
My eyes. All right. Well, let's go to the phone. 661-244-9839. That's 661-244-9839.
All right. And
folks, don't forget, please turn down whatever listening device you're using. Listen to us, talk to us directly through your iPhone, iPad, whatever it might be. And that way we don't get the echo, and that'll help us, too, with the delay that we experience.
All right. We are going to go to area code 510 first. 510. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. What's on your mind today?
Hey guys, what's up?
Good evening.
So yeah, all this stuff happening in the U.S. I mean, it's bound to come, man. All we can do is really count on the Lord. But America, man, I mean, we don't follow God, and it's just a judgment, you know. So much blood has been shed, innocent blood in American land, you know. The Indians, the babies, and then the slaves, all this stuff, man. And we did this in the name of God as a country. And I think that has a lot to do with it. The country is going to reap what it sows, and now it's just sowing worse. I mean, 30 years ago, Russia, we looked at them as the bad guys, you know, with the Rocky movie. Now it's kind of the opposite. Putin, he invokes the name of God. Obama, he says God bless you to the abortionist lady, or Planned Parenthood, or whatever it's at. So,
same thing.
My advice is just, you know, get as close to God as you can. We all fall short, though, and need to repent.
Well, you make some good points there. Of course, judgment will fall under this country. You know, we've been given so many good blessings, and of course, we've squandered those blessings. We get, as our guest caller has pointed out to me privately, we get the government we work for, earn, and deserve, and certainly by our acquiescence to the power, the elected officials, or elected people we elected. We've gotten the government we work for, earned, and deserved, and judgment will fall heavily upon us for everything from the abortion, the slaughter of innocents, to this stuff with the gay, lesbian, transgendered stuff. I mean, it's ridiculous. So I want to thank you so much. Anything else before we cut you loose?
Yeah, I mean, that's where it's at. I mean, it's not even bad enough. At least 20, 30 years ago, people had the knowledge, the respect, at least, to know to keep that stuff to themselves and hide it. Because let's admit it, it's been probably going on ever since the days of Noah. But
indeed.
The problem is now we're pushing the agenda as a nation. And now we're calling it good. I mean, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, people, at least they had the respect to hide it. Now it's just flourished like evil.
Well, it's not really hiding it. It's not shoving it down the throats of the 97% heterosexual population, or the 97% non-deviant, when it comes to the other aspects of things. So, or the will, or the morality. It's really an assault on our morals, on our religious freedoms. It really is. I mean, so we did not allow that 30-some years ago. Well, we did, I suppose, beginning, or Roe v. Wade, and we accepted that as law, which is baloney. But
like a little leaven.
Yes. Well, thank you very much for your call. We're going to move on. God bless you, my friend. Thanks so much for listening. All right.
Have a great night.
You too.
All right. We're going to move on here to area code 305. 305, you're up next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hi.
Good evening.
There. Hi. Well, on the preparation note that W was talking about, I know this might sound like maybe a small potato thing, but I'm down in down here in the deep South, and right now, a lot of the stores down here, department stores, and I shop at the low end, so like Kmart, but all the stores down here are having really deep sales on winter wear and on pretty good quality leather sneakers and things. And like they had leather sneakers, buy one pair, get one, the second pair for $1. And, the tops, long sleeve tops and everything are 40% off of sale prices and stuff. So anyway, if anybody's got extra money, which I know money's hard to come by, but if you got some extra money and you can afford to purchase, clothes and shoes and stuff and put it back for people for next winter up north, if you got friends and relatives and stuff like that, this is a good opportunity to purchase a whole lot of shoes and clothes and jackets and things and put it back for the next season for friends and relatives and whatever. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Great advice. Just like you buy wrapping paper the day after Christmas or the week after Christmas. Great advice. Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you so much for that call. And yeah, that's okay.
Just a thought.
Very good. God bless you. Thank you so much for your knowledge and for your advice. Appreciate it. All right, we're going to move right along here with the callers. I just want to respond to Molly. Molly, no, you know what? I'm not going to respond to this. Just go ahead and take a call.
All right. 717.
Oh, wait a second. Molly, don't ever email me again.
717. We're coming to you next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hey, how you doing? Good evening, Doug and Joe. It's great to be on with you guys again. This is Sean from Pennsylvania.
Hey, Sean.
Pennsylvania.
Sure.
I talked to you guys. Great to hear from you guys, too. I've been listening to you guys for about 2 to 3 years, and I haven't called probably in a couple months. Last time I called, we were talking about the IRS and how I felt that that was kind of being done kind of on purpose to kind of wake up America in a little bit, try to get a revolution started in this country. I don't know if you remember me calling back then.
I do. We do. I do, yes.
But I wanted to throw this out there with you. I had a question because I've been studying the fact of how Hitler was put into power in regards to World War III, and kind of how that was kind of done to cause kind of they caused the Holocaust, the Rothschilds and the powers that be, to kind of push the Jews back to Israel.
Right.
I mean, one of the things I've uncovered, and I don't know if you guys have studied this yet, is like the Balfour Declaration. Balfour sent a letter to Lord Rothschild talking about setting up the Zionist state and kind of asking for it. And that was kind of eye-opener for me. I didn't even realize that was going on in that kind of...
Yeah. Now, okay, now we're getting close to Molly's territory here. Now, I understand what you're saying, okay, with the Balfour Declaration and how that all came to be. And people have to understand that to blame... you're not headed down this, we're going to blame the Jews, are we, road?
No. And I want to clarify where I'm getting at right now.
Okay.
I believe the Jews are God's people. I believe God in the end times is going to turn back to the Jews, and I believe that Israel, is the apple of God's eye. God loves them. Unfortunately, I believe the Jews have turned away from Jesus right now, and the third temple that's coming, that's going to be built, is going to be almost like spitting in Jesus' face when they reinstate the temple sacrifice. And I believe the powers that be, because I heard the same type of argument that it's all the Jews' fault, we should blame them, and I'm not with that at all. I mean,
let me just interrupt by saying. Let me interrupt you by saying this. I think that anyone who would blame for example, the banking crisis on a Jewish conspiracy, or the Jews, okay, anyone who would do that lacks the intellectual capacity to understand or to differentiate between the Zionist mindset. Okay, to me, they show this intellectual bankruptcy at such a subpar level that it's even difficult to discuss it. Now, Rothschilds, certainly from a Jewish lineage. However, you've got this intermixing, going on here. It's not a Jewish conspiracy any more than what's taking place with the bankers is a Catholic conspiracy, given the fact that it's a Roman, a Vatican bank that's involved as well. It doesn't make any sense. So, go ahead.
I don't believe
it's a
Jewish conspiracy, and I just want to get your guys' take on this, because I think the Jews are being fooled just as much as we're being fooled in regards to who the powers that be that are controlling their government and who's really controlling the movements in Israel. I think right now the Jews as a people, the Orthodox Jews
I'm sorry, the delay is killing me here. You just brought up a wonderful point. See, the ultimate goal here, and then I'm going to shut up and let you finish. The ultimate goal here is to outlaw the three monotheistic religions, and that does include Judaism. It's to outlaw Christianity, it's to outlaw Judaism, and it's to outlaw Islam. Now, as religions, and that's the goal of the New World Order. But what are they going to replace that with? They're going to replace that with a state religion and a false god. Okay, go ahead. I'm going to be quiet, and you go ahead and finish your thought.
Yeah, when I've been studying a lot of the movements going on in Israel in regards to after World War II, and where the money was funding in from, and some of the things that opened my eyes is one of the things that you have in Israel is you have the Rothschild Hotel, which is a 4-star hotel. It's one of the biggest hotels in Tel Aviv. You have Rothschild Avenue, or Boulevard, I think it is, in Israel. That's one of the main streets. And actually a lot of Orthodox Jews go out and protest on Rothschild Boulevard in regards to the control of the Zionists. If you go and look at international news programs, you'll see this going on in regards to the Orthodox Jews going and protesting Zionism. The Knesset was funded through Rothschild money. The Israeli Supreme Court is laid out in stone the complete belief structure of Freemasonry and the Illuminati is laid out in stone in the Supreme Court. And when you're walking into the Supreme Court, on the wall in the entrance is a picture of the whole Rothschild family with two of the Israeli leaders. Their names jumped out of my mind right now. I'm sorry. Sharon Perez. No, I'm getting his name wrong. I'd have to look it up, but let me see if I can find it real fast.
Well, yeah, we get that. No, we get
Simone
that.
Perez and Isaac Rabin, and in this picture is every one of the Rothschild family sitting over a model of the Supreme Court before it was built. All the money for that Supreme Court was funneled in from the Rothschilds. The second thing that I've studied is the Temple Institute, which is the main organization behind building a third temple. There's a letter that you can see on their website written from the head of the Temple Institute, written to one of the Rothschilds, and money is being funded into the Temple Institute from the Rothschild family in the tunes of multi-millions of dollars in regards to building this third temple. So the Rothschilds are already heavily invested in regards to what's going on in Israel.
Yeah, and I understand.
To bring about,
I understand what you're saying completely. And you're right. Yeah, there are a faction of people who call themselves Jews who are actually the vultures on the true Jewish people and on Christianity and Jesus-believing Jews themselves, and they are outlined in Revelation as being the synagogue of Satan. They say, they call themselves Jews. They are the synagogue of Satan. They're not talking about Israel or the people of Israel as a nation. They're talking about the people who, I mean, if we look back even to World War II and before that, as you said, there were things done by the shadow governments, the satanic Moloch worshippers, these evil Satan worshippers who have infiltrated and tried to set. What these people think they're doing is fulfilling Bible prophecy by setting up Israel, when it was God's doing all along. But these people think that they're taking credit for it. There are infiltrators at the highest levels of all governments, but most importantly is the shadow government that controls all governments. And I mean, you can go on YouTube and find clips of Joe Biden and saying he's a Zionist, and all these other politicians and their dedication to Israel, as they say. But when they say, our God, we trust in our God, they're not talking about the same God all the time. And I guess what my dad's saying, and what we need to be careful of, is Israel, as you said, is the apple of God's eye. He established that government. He put it into and scattered it among the nations, brought it back, scattered it among the nations, and brought it back again. And whether these people on earth think that they set it up through their own, usury and wars is untrue, because all things are used by God to bring about His end, not their end. So that's the only thing I think we need to clear up.
Yeah, and I don't want you to think I'm trying to bring hate to the Jewish people, because I'm not. I'm not anti-Semitic. I'm not against the Jews in any way, shape, or form. In fact, I minister to the Jews every chance I get. I mean, and a lot of times I get turned away. I have led a couple to the Lord. That's not tooting my own horn, but it's, where my heart is at. So I'm not against them in any way, shape, or form, Joe. I'm just bringing this out because I think this is not discussed in the church, because the church kind of wants to turn a blind eye to this. And Jesus said this. He said, I've come in my Father's name, and you've rejected me, talking to the Jews in Israel. He said, another is going to come in his own name, and him you shall receive. And what I'm talking about right now is the Rothschilds are already building up the system to have the Jews accept another coming in his own name. When that third temple is built, I believe the Rothschilds are going to be the main funders. They're going to be the main power players behind the Jews being tricked to accept a man that's going to trace his lineage back to David. Because for the Jews to accept an antichrist, he's got to be able to trace his lineage back, to that kingdom. Because the Jews are looking, the difference between Jesus and this man that's coming is the Jews were willing to follow Jesus up to the point that they thought that they believed that he was going to topple Rome and sit as a king. As soon as Jesus started speaking about, I'm going to go to the cross, I'm going to die, I'm going to leave you, you're going to be persecuted, all of a sudden, and they started talking about he is the I am that I am, the Jews didn't want to accept that anymore, and they turned away from him, because they were looking at scriptures and they were looking at this man who's coming in the kingship of David and going to rule the world. So this man that's coming has to fulfill that with the Jews to accept him. And he's going to fulfill it to a point, up until the point that he stands in the temple and proclaims himself as God. And then you see in the scripture of the book of Revelation that the Jews wake up at that point when they realize he stands up and proclaims himself as God, because the Jews know, and the big argument they had with Jesus is they said that nobody else can be God. There's only one God. And Jesus, when the high priest ripped his garments and said, blasphemy, because he was saying he was the Son of God and he was the Messiah, they understood that the problem that was going on there. And if there's going to be the same problem when finally the Antichrist steps up and proclaims himself as God, they're going to realize they were duped. And then you're going to see that the Bible talking about them fleeing. So this is being set up by the Rothschilds right now to trick them.
Yep.
And, when you say Rothschilds, well, let's make sure this is being set up by the 13 bloodlines.
Yeah, correct. Well,
all 13.
The money is being handled by the Rothschilds, who are the bankers for the Vatican, and also all the international banks. But yeah, I know there's a lot more power players behind that family.
Right.
I get that. And
you got the Rockefellers, and I mean you got the Bundys, the Astors, and the Rockefellers, and so I mean it's just not the Rothschilds.
Yeah, correct. And you have the Morgans and.
Right. And then they all have their positions to play.
I know it's a big cabal that's behind them, but right now I see the money being funded in through that family. And, Satan is ultimately behind them. And Satan wants to destroy the Jews. He wants to destroy the Christians. And that's ultimately what the end goal of this is. So the great deception is to get the Jews to accept somebody who's not Jesus. And then accepting that person leads them down to a point where they can be destroyed. And that is the big deception that's coming there. And this deception is already being funded into place. And when you start looking into the Temple Institute, they already have all the items for worship purchased and made already. They have the Sanhedrin, which is the ruling council of the temple, has convened since 2005. So all the pieces are being put into place for this third temple to be erected and be put there. I mean, I don't know if out of this coming war that's coming, you're going to have something move with that Temple Mount, the Dome of the Rock. I don't know. I'm not going to make any predictions there, but I'm just telling you that the money is being funded in there.
And caller, we're going to have to move on, but you're right. The temple organization, the Temple Institute, if folks find the documentary, The Daniel Project, it gets into this a lot, and it talks about prophecies and being fulfilled in our times that have been fulfilled, talking about the end times. It's called The Daniel Project, and it gets into that a little bit. And I thank you for your call. We're going to have to move on. You have a good night.
You're very
Thank you. You too, guys. God bless.
All right. God bless.
Just before I get off, if you guys can look up online, just look at the Supreme Court and just match it up to Freemasonry. You'll be blown away on the the ceiling
absolutely.
of the Supreme Court. It has a pyramid with an all-seeing eye, and that's up above the library. You have to walk up 30 steps to get up to this open area that looks over Jerusalem, and you got to walk into this library that has the last 3 floors. And the first floor is only for the lawyers, the second floor is only for judges, and the top floor is only for retired judges. And then from the window, you can see the pyramid and the all-seeing eye. So you have the 33 degrees of Freemasonry. And then once you get to the 33rd degree in retirement, you're now accepted into the level of being possibly accepted into the Illuminati. That's why you're looking out on that pyramid with the all-seeing eye. And this is in stone in the Supreme Court of Israel.
Well, we'll check that out and appreciate the info. And you have a great night.
One of our books
you
here
too.
does
God
get
bless,
into that
guys.
show. God bless.
God bless.
Yeah, whenever I in our library, one of our books gets into that. But by the way, you know what, Molly, if you're still listening, I'm so sorry. Oh man, if you didn't throw your iPod, iPad, computer, whatever you're listening on, your iPhone, if you didn't throw it through the window, if you're listening to me, I owe you a great big apology. You know, sometimes there's no excuse when people write in the subject line and it's like a paragraph in the subject line, and the writing is so small here on my monitor. I totally misunderstood what she said. Molly, I'm so sorry. Okay, you can email me anytime. I apologize. I thought I let me just say this. It was my fault. Upon reading a closer scrutiny here, I get it. It just took me a minute to put the letters together. Joe, should I do more groveling? I mean, seriously, should I do more groveling?
No,
Molly, I am so sorry. It was sometimes, you know. Oh man, I mean, I am so sorry.
He digs himself in holes sometimes,
as
we all do.
Let me tell you something. I am the best hole digger there is. I owe her just a whirl of apologies because I'm looking at this and it had a few words in there that I didn't. We hear there's Ukrainian Nazis, like the rumor Hitler was half Jew. Which side do? Well, it goes. It did not read, and then she writes, guest was A+++, and I'm looking at that thinking that was, you know how people will use symbols instead of letters. I'm thinking that spelled out something that no, there was truth in that man's voice. And when I open up the email, the email subject line cut off the rest of that at the plus. Do I need to explain any more, or am I sufficiently embarrassed? Am I embarrassed? I mean, I'm embarrassed by that. Molly,
and you got your apology across.
Yeah, okay. I am so sorry. I just hope you're still listening.
All right, we got 15 minutes left. We're going to go to 603 area code now. 603, then 231. 603, you're up first. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Doug and Joe, I hope you guys are doing well.
Very well. What's on your mind tonight?
Doug, did you I know you get hundreds of emails. Did you by any chance see the email on Loretta Fuddy?
Yes. Are you talking about the Frogman email?
Yeah. Was that
yes.
bone-chilling?
Well, yes. But here's the problem with videos when it comes to when it comes to videos. Now, one thing I would like to do is I would like to talk with that author of the individual who located that footage and posted it. I know where it was posted, and I know her screen name. I know her internet identity. I would like, and I know that she is an excellent, absolutely excellent researcher.
Yes.
The only problem with videos like this is folks, if you don't know what we're talking about, at the freeze frames, there appeared to be a frogman in the water at the crash of Loretta Fuddy's plane. It does appear that there's an anomaly there, and it does appear to be a frogman. Okay,
right.
Or a guy in a scuba suit, whatever. It does appear that way. The only problem is the authentication of the video, and then the questioning. Well, did anyone else see this? And there are some other lines of questioning. But yeah, it's interesting to say the least. But without that, even without that, there's plenty of fire here and there's plenty of smoke. But yes, I saw it.
Right, that's the reason I sent it to you, because you're an investigator.
Yeah, and we in fact, I've got the footage that this woman, who's again just a really great investigator, and I've got a lot of respect for her, with working with what little she's got, and I watched people to actually turn against her on the forum in which she posted these images. And it just made me think, wow, this woman did a lot of work and isolated some frames that had some good data there. We've got to ask the question, what is that? And see, if it's not a scuba guy, for lack of a better term, what is it? Right. And don't tell me it's a sneaker.
Why didn't Mr. Yamamoto come out and say that he saw a scuba guy pull her under the water and such and such?
Yeah, there are some, exactly, and there are some statements that were made that were taken back, and there's issues there. But I'd like to talk with that woman if she's listening. I have a lot of respect for her investigative prowess.
Right. And may I give a quick prepping plug?
Sure.
W just mentioned about feeding the city. And I was encouraged by him the night he was on your show after Steve and Pastor Langford did the Power of the Blood. He came on the next show, and he really just laid his heart out and said, don't just feed yourself, feed the whole city. So, W, if you're still listening, thank God you encouraged me. But for people who are having a difficult time prepping, go to your grocery store, to the bakery department, and ask them for their white food pails. They're free, and they're food pails with lids. And the dollar store has seeds, 4 for $1. Rice at BJ's, 50 pounds for $20. Walmart has 25-pound bags of flour for $9. And just slow and steady. And any women, single women out there, I just want to encourage you that Jesus is your husband. And I believe that Jesus will move this city to keep me safe. And I pray and I ask that these women would pray and ask God to give them the strength of a man, the courage of a man to conquer in Jesus' name whatever they need to that's coming upon us whenever. And that's all. And I pray for you both. I pray for your show and your mother-in-law. So.
Thank you. God bless you. Thank you very much.
You're most
for that.
welcome. Good night, dear.
Good night. Thank you for the call.
No problem.
All right. We're going to go to 231. 231, thanks for holding. You're up next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hey, thank you. Hey, Doug and Joe, first-time caller. Just started listening to you around Christmas time.
Glad to have you.
Hey, Glad to have you, actually. You know, at this time, a lot of people are feeling awful hopeless, and it's nice to have an anchor out there deciphering through the fallacies to find the realities, you know.
Well, we try to be that, and you know, we're all in this together, aren't we? I mean seriously, we're all in this morass together, so we all have to lift each other up and help each other out.
Amen. You know, I guess we're talking a lot about prepping, and that's so much is coming at us. It's just an absolutely, I don't know, unfathomable. You know, one thing after another, from the weather to all the way across the board. You know, to what's going on with Russia, and just so much every day, all the time, every hour, and you know, we can prep and prepare, and you know, for those of us who believe in the one and the only, it sure has prepped our hearts to forced us to want to get close to Him in these times. And it's nice to have Joe opening that book and reading out of the Bible periodically as references. That's really nice to hear on this end.
Well, thanks, and I know he appreciates that. And I got to tell you that without that grounding, where would we be? You sound like you're close to my age, or we're
digging yourself a hole, possibly.
I'm 54. I'm 54. Father of 3. Youngest is 31. Got 7 grandkids and another one on the way. I live in Traverse City, Michigan.
Okay. Have you seen in your life, in your adult life, have you seen anything like what we're seeing now in terms of the headlines and the news and the world events?
Doug, when Obama, it's when we first heard his name, when he came onto the scene and was campaigning for presidency in 2007. And then I started listening to Glenn Beck. I'd never heard anybody in my life talk like Glenn Beck, revealing all these things every day. It was absolutely incredible. And then I graduated off of Beck and started listening to AJ, Alex Jones, and going to church with Pastor Chuck Baldwin in Montana from my house here in Traverse City. And on his YouTube page, there was some True News links, if you will, and that's where I found Steve Quayle, Tom Horn, you guys. It's like, my, oh my, you know, this is absolutely phenomenal. And, you know, it leads you to the Lord, the stuff that's going on. It's, you know, I've been listening to you guys, and you know, I think we all just, you know, need to concentrate on ourselves and our relationship with God, and spend a lot of time in prayer. You know, we're all feeling kind of hopeless and grasping out, trying to find an answer, a resolution to this insanity, to this evil. And, you know, it's like, can we get a Nineveh? Can we get a reprieve from this? I've got grandbabies. You know, I got 7, 8 grandchildren. I'm 54 years old. I'm not ready for this, you know. But if it's the Lord's doing, then, you know, I know it's brought me to my knees a lot, and I'm in prayer a lot. I prayed for Hagmann and Hagmann, and I do, you know. So just so you know that you guys, you know, we keep you in prayer. My wife and I, and we listen to you all the time, and so, you know, the Lord's working. His Holy Spirit sweeping across this land. You know, this is a battle beyond battle. You know, this is what we've read about, and you know, these things we can only fathom them as we read history as a kid growing up, and just it's non-detainable. It's out of your reach. And,
exactly.
And now it's a reality. And, you know, I mean, I can hear the pain and concern in your voice as you talk to callers and stuff, and, you know, the same concerns and heartfelt deafness, you know, that we all have. We all share. We are all in this all together. We are brothers and sisters. Things that we hear about and read about daily. Christians being slaughtered in different countries, you know. And it's always been afar, but now it seems to be coming here, you know. So, wow.
You know, you mentioned about Christians being slaughtered in, I believe it was in Baghdad, or I'm sorry, it was in Libya. It was in Benghazi, not Baghdad. It was in Benghazi. There was a group going door to door, group of Muslims, and asking the religious affiliation of the occupants inside, and if they weren't a Muslim or did not submit to Islam, they were killed immediately, taken out and shot in the head. And I think there were 8 deaths in Benghazi last week just because, well, for the crime of being Christian.
Mm-hmm.
So look at what we've done.
A month before that, or two, you know, was it North Korea or South Korea? There, the same kind of thing with the Christians. You know, I mean, if they had a Bible, they were slaughtered, or if they went to a movie, they were slaughtered. And you know, I see that evolving into to where we're headed, to what's coming here. This one world order comes with a one world religion. We're talking about a caliphate.
Well, exactly.
And when you know, when you're talking about a fundamental transformation, I don't know how you do that, to be honest with you. I mean, not too many people grasped onto it. But 5 days prior to him taking that office, he said that, and it hit me pretty hard. I started digesting what that meant. I kind of like who I am. I'm a sinner, that I know, but I belong to
we all are
the one and only triune God there is, and I don't know how you're going to fundamentally change me, so it's going to come down to that. And we know that. That's Bible. That's what God tells us is going to happen.
Well, exactly.
So, I mean, it's hard.
You know, the one thing here, no one's going to transform any of us inside our faith, and I will die, you know, at the foot of my driveway, but not on my knees. I will die fighting.
The Lord said, if you don't provide for your family, you're worse than an infidel, and He ain't talking about just a job, my brother. You know, we're to provide safety and security for them. He didn't bring us into this world to, you know, to stretch our necks out and have them, you know, removed. You know,
that's exactly right.
They want us to believe, but you know, our Lord was the gentleman of gentlemen, the precedent center. You know, and He was a man of men as well. So, you know, I mean, a lot of people try to play everything down and turn things around, but no, you know, we're made in His image, and you know, the love we have for our family and our children and our grandchildren, and if He loves us more than we can fathom, it's the same thing. He's going to protect us if we're in His love and in His will, you know, as we would our own. So, you know,
right on, brother.
I'm right there with you guys. You know, morning, noon, or night, you need me, you got my number. So, not much I can do, but I've got you in my prayers, and we love you. Don't know you, but we love you because we know you're our brothers. So, and sure appreciate you guys.
I just want to say thank you so much. You've actually you've closed our program for this evening, and we really appreciate your call. God bless you, my friend.
Well, God bless you,
right.
and
All right,
Joe.
Brother.
And we'll talk to you and pray for you much. See you soon.
All right.
God bless you, and thanks.
Bye-bye.
Have a great night. Quick note here before we go. Tomorrow we'll be joined by Stan Deo in our regular second hour Tuesday slot. And Friday we have John Moore coming on for the first and second hour, and also a few other schedulings we don't have yet.
Sunday, Steve Quayle and Pastor Langford. This coming Sunday is a very special program, Steve Quayle and Pastor Langford. And once again, Molly, if you're listening, Molly, I'm so sorry.
So Sunday we have Steve and Pastor Langford. Friday we have John Moore for the first 2 hours. Tomorrow, Stan Dale, and more guest announcements to come in the coming days, hopefully. Folks, that'll do it for us tonight. Until tomorrow, we'll be back here at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Have a great night. God bless and stay safe. And God willing, we will be here tomorrow. Good night, everyone.